What do you see when you look in the mirror, and how do you feel about that image? Sure, we've all seen the cute Instagram captions about body positivity, but are we buying it? Ask most teenagers, and they've struggled in some part with their bodies, their weight, their hair, their skin, but mostly with their perceptions about who they are and how they look. Body image, eating disorders, and teenagers is a difficult topic for parents or teachers to discuss. And if there's one person a lot of us young people, parents, school counselors, clients, and everyone else can agree on, who can help navigate us through today, it's Mr. Ross Addison. He's one of Dubai's foremost cognitive behavioral therapists for children and adolescents, managing director of reverse psychology, and someone who was super encouraging when I shared my idea for TeenWork with him. Hi, Mr. Addison. Thank you
Hi.
to have you on TeenWork.
Thank you very much for having me.
Let's start with the basics. How would you say the body image affects teenagers? When does it start and how so?
I've worked with young people, even as young as 9, who have come to me with emerging body image kind of concerns and traits around early body dysmorphic concerns, even young people or people as young as 8 or 9 coming with emerging eating disorder type traits, which is, I wouldn't say that's the norm age for onset, but it really can and has over the last 5 years or so started to affect the younger and younger generations, younger and younger people. I think typically the onset age is probably around teenage years, emergence of adolescence. I think there's a wide array of research for why that may be the case in terms of starting secondary school, enabling of smartphones, more access to the internet and to social media platforms, more social activity, going outside of the house, these types of things, seeing people, being more aware of our bodies, clothing choices, fashion, all of these sorts of things, I think probably have contributed to why the adolescent phase tends to be the kind of onset period that we most typically see, 13, 14, 15. This is probably the age group that I see where most young people are having those emerging traits. Typically, the disorder may not actually be diagnosed until maybe 16, 17 or 18, perhaps even later, because emerging traits can be quite different to the diagnostic criteria. We can all have some emerging traits here or there, but it's only when a certain number of those traits all come together where a diagnosis may actually be formed. So that's a little bit about the onset. I think body image affects everyone in all sorts of different ways. I see it across all different young people who present with very different backgrounds, home life situations, schooling, but really there's no real way of determining which kind of young person is going to develop these kind of traits. Sure, there are predisposing factors. So if someone has a genetic history of body image concerns, eating disorder traits within the family, they are more likely to acquire or to develop those kinds of concerns. But most typically speaking, it can kind of happen to anyone, again, depending on different life experiences. What we do know about body image concerns and eating disorder traits is that when working with those conditions as a psychologist, a lot of the time we're focusing on self-esteem. Almost everyone that I've met with that has body image concerns or emerging eating disorder traits is presenting with symptoms of low self-esteem, low self-worth, low confidence. And I think many psychologists would probably agree that if someone has low self-esteem, they would be more likely to acquire something like body image or eating disorder traits, mostly because low self-esteem lends itself to thinking a bit poorly of ourselves. You know, not having such positive or neutral thoughts about our lives, about our abilities, about our qualities. And when we are perhaps not thinking as neutral or positively about ourselves as we could do, it's not a leap in the ocean to think that someone may then or therefore start developing concerns about their appearance, particularly middle schoolers or adolescent children. I think once they start developing low self-esteem having questionable thoughts about themselves should anything occur at school, such as bullying or negative comments, particularly about weight, shape, or size or appearance. If someone already has low self-esteem, they're much more likely to absorb those negative comments and then become very hypervigilant towards them. What I would say is that once negative thoughts have started, even if it's not entirely related to body image or eating disorder concerns, there becomes this much more widespread negativity about ourselves and about self-worth, confidence, likability, and even lovability. And these types of traits can quite easily begin to form into depressive type traits, which is another of the most comorbid conditions that we see with body image concerns and eating disorders. Depression and social anxiety, very, very aligned. So if someone has depression and social anxiety, they perhaps would be more at risk of developing concerns about their appearance, and likewise the other way as well. As well as developing other mental health concerns, which are really quite prominent with body image and eating disorders. A lot of young people will find it extremely hard to make friends if they have things like social anxiety and body image concerns, mainly because they're always questioning or worried about judgment or fearful of judgment of what others are thinking of them, which can therefore reinforce these negative thoughts they have about themselves. So I do think that it's a really tricky condition to kind of work with. And when thinking about kind of what does it look like or how does it present, it really varies across different people.
Are there any steps teenagers should take to build a positive relationship with our bodies?
And there are some essentials. So typically with young people, I talk about some essential basics that are really necessary to be in place to, I suppose, safeguard against some mental health concerns. Things like engaging in regular exercise, maintaining healthy sleep cycles, maintaining a balanced, nutritious diet, getting plenty of water, and particularly in the UAE, making sure that you're getting enough sunlight each day. Typically 5 to 10 minutes is enough. If you have those basics in place, or even those essentials in place, it really can just push back on mental health a little bit. And I think something else that I then, I suppose, as a second step, encourage young people to do, with or without mental health concerns, is to make sure that they are still engaging in activities that make them feel productive, give meaning and purpose to their day, and mostly that they enjoy. With regards to, in terms of particular to relationship to body, I think it's really important to speak kindly about ourselves, to ourselves. So a lot of people might actually find it a bit uncomfortable to talk to themselves in a mirror or to every now and again say something to themselves. But even just being kind to yourself and saying something each morning, each evening about a part of your body that you particularly like is a really good way to offset any of the perhaps the negative or aspects of the body that the young person isn't particularly happy about. I would say wear clothes that make you feel confident and that make you feel good. Spend time, as I mentioned, focusing on aspects of your body that you really like. I think it's often more important to focus on the positives than it is the negatives, because the scales will kind of shift a little bit and focus more on the positive. Have a level of acceptance that nobody in the world is perfect, and that genetically we're all very different. Some of us have bodies that can look this way, some of us just don't have them. So I think it's just being able to acknowledge that we are who we are, and that we don't need to change to be liked more by anyone else, or to even be able to like ourselves. And I think most importantly, acknowledge that no one will ever focus on your body as much as you do. Okay, a lot of people say to me, I'm walking through the mall or I'm at school and I'm worried what people are thinking about my body. Most people will not even have a thought about it, even if they're looking at you. They're just not thinking about it. So it's our own worries and fears that maintain those ruminating thoughts about, or possible ruminating thoughts about our body, but no one else cares as much as we do.
All right. Now, most teenagers don't have control about what's being cooked or how much time that we can spend on food or fitness. So how can one's family help with getting a positive body image, or even helping with eating habits?
We don't need a gym, to be able to improve our body. You know, a lot of the time, the way our body looks is often because of what we eat anyway. But in focusing on exercise, you know, we can always go for a run, we can do YouTube videos if it's something that a young person wants to engage in. So in terms of the fitness aspect, you know, we don't need lots of money to be able to make our body look slightly different. There's many home kind of workouts that we can do that can interfere and affect with that as well. I think a lot of the time it's about psychoeducation. You know, a lot of families, a lot of parents are really, I suppose, particularly more so now than they were 20 years ago, much more cognizant of healthier living, healthier lifestyles, omitting too much junk food and fizzy drinks in the home environment. I think parents are perhaps more skilled now than they were 20 or 30 years ago. But I think, you know, I get young people coming to me saying, you know, I don't like what mum and dad are cooking, or I don't like what's being offered at home. Okay, well, speak to your parents. You know, I'm sure, as I've encountered with many parents, that they're more than happy to implement some kind of new food choices within the home environment. It's not that it's super fixed. So I think speak to parents, you know, or have a very open dialogue about it, about, you know, every now and again, can we have tuna with a salad instead of, you know, I don't know, chicken pasta or something. But I just think always communication is always the most effective strategy to try and work through concerns, and particularly around diet at home and nutrition and these types of things. I think open family dialogue is the best approach.
Now, we already know that the media and, of course, our peers feed us a lot of unrealistic images and ideas about looking good. And let's face it, no teenager doesn't want to look good. So, how do we deal with this pressure?
It's a very, very good question. And I think millions of people are asking it. There isn't one answer that's going to satisfy everyone, unfortunately. I think there are some preventative strategies, of course, to this. One would be to limit the amount of social media access you have or time spent on it. I think it's important to recognize that what we see online isn't necessarily a true reflection of what that person may look like, you know, when thinking specifically about images that are posted. I think in CBT, we talk a lot about cognitive distortions or seeing things through a distorted lens. I think that's a lot of the time what social media is. We're looking at images through distortion. We are all very much aware of filters and photo manipulation. There are some industries in the world and some influencers or people who perhaps feel that they need to look a certain way as part of their job or as part of their kind of career or what they're trying to achieve. But just because they look a certain way on a picture doesn't necessarily mean that they look that way in real life. I think a lot more influencers and people are being much more proactive on social media. I don't know if you've seen it, but a lot of people are showing like a before and after photo as a collage on one post. So they show what it looks like when they are, let's say, posing for a photo, and then when they're relaxed. And what you actually see is almost two very, very different people. But a lot of the time we don't get to see the after photo, we just get to see the best snapshot of that person. So I think being aware of social media and I suppose the purpose of social media, you know, it is to advertise ourselves. I can't think of a better way to describe the way that we use social media. It's to extend our profile and to advertise a lot of the time to advertise our positives. So I think being aware of the pitfalls and the dangers of social media is really important. Again, it does come back to my point earlier about preventative strategies for mental health concerns. So even if you are looking at things on social media that maybe you have desires to look like or to be like, if you have balanced or good mental health, most likely those photos, those influences that you're looking at won't have a significant impact on your life in terms of pulling you down or making you feel bad about yourself. But I think it's just really important to limit some exposure. I think always important to surround ourselves with people that add value to our lives as opposed to bring it down. I think a lot of young people, UAE and everywhere around the world, would have encountered people that perhaps not the best fit for them. You know, that just maybe don't make them feel as good or as positive as they could do. So I think limiting perhaps people that aren't all that great in our lives is a good thing as well, whether it be on school, whether it be on social media. There's nothing wrong with unfollowing someone, you know, especially if you're aware that when you look at their photos, it makes you feel bad about yourself. I think perhaps it's not a bad idea to unfollow them for now, and perhaps reconsider following them later. I don't know, 6 months' time. Yeah, why not? But I also think there's nothing wrong with wanting to look better. You know, I think, and again, I'm focusing quite a lot on the UAE, but it's very much a beach community. You know, it's very much a place in the world where young people will be out at the beach on the weekends. You know, it's not like we're always covered up here. So there's nothing wrong with wanting to look different or wanting to look better. I think it's just knowing when it becomes a bit obsessive, when it becomes a bit too much. Yeah. Lots of young people I meet with say to me that they would like to look better. It's entirely fine. It's normal. Nothing wrong with wanting to better ourselves, but it's just knowing when it's gone a little bit too far, and when perhaps it's starting to have quite a negative impact on our mental health.
Of course, everything in moderation, essentially.
Yes, really important.
Right. Now, what would you say leads to an eating disorder? What would you say are the first signs of an eating disorder?
First signs of an eating disorder. Again, it's important that I say that it's not one or two signs that necessarily indicate that an eating disorder is going to emerge or that it's already there, because let's face it, some days we wake up the wrong side of the bed, we don't like how we look. That doesn't mean we've got a big problem. That's perhaps just a one-off, or it's very, very infrequent. But I think once you start putting a combination of traits together, then it can look more like, okay, something may be emerging here. So some early type traits would be, I suppose, negative thoughts, or the emergence of having some negative thoughts about shape, weight, and size, our appearance, the way that we look, perhaps trying to camouflage or conceal our perceived flaws. So by that, I mean some young people with, say, negative thoughts about their body will try to cover up a bit more, perhaps wear baggier clothes. But again, I should say that in isolation is not an eating disorder trait, because it can also be fashionable to wear oversized. But the individual themselves will know why they're wearing the oversized clothes. And sometimes it's to conceal the stomach, especially when someone is sat down. If someone is, let's say, trying to sit in certain positions that would conceal their perceived flaws, arms, legs, stomach, whatever it may be, those would perhaps be signs that body image or eating disorder traits are emerging. Restricting of certain foods or restricting of meals would certainly be something that would be a bit more alarming and could be a very early trait as well. It wouldn't perhaps be the first trait, but it could emerge maybe as early as a couple of weeks or a few weeks after having some of these concerns about, just general concerns about weight, shape, and size. Certainly a preoccupation with looking a certain way or wanting to look a certain way, desire for a flat stomach, desire to be, or to weigh less, desire to be slimmer, but more so a preoccupation with it, you know, repetitive, ruminating thoughts about it would be quite concerning. More and more mirror checking, or contrary to that would be avoidance of mirrors or reflections, would be something that would just have my mind thinking, okay, this person really isn't liking their appearance at the moment. What other traits might be present? Fears and worries about judgment relating to weight, shape, and size and appearance and how that looks. Fluctuations in weight. So parents now and again can notice, oh, over the summer, my child seems to have lost 4 or 5 kilograms. That would be something that would be concerning for me as a therapist, and something I'd want to explore. In females, menstrual irregularities, so missing of periods, would be something that I'd want to explore more. Of course, with young people, particularly within the first year of menstrual cycle starting, it can be quite irregular anyway. But if there has been a period of regularity and then it becomes irregular, that would be something that I would want to certainly explore more.
Of course.
Self-esteem, low self-worth, withdrawn behavior, going quiet in class, not wanting to see friends at the weekend, avoidance of things like the beach or situations where perhaps it would be more appropriate. Exactly, where it would be more expected that there would be perhaps more skin on show, would be something that maybe someone with an emerging eating disorder or body image concern would want to.
Or if someone has any relation to anyone, be it a friendship, a romantic relationship, family, etc., and this person has an eating disorder, what should they do to help? And how do they refer them or get them help?
Yeah, I think that it's a question that I'm asked a lot of the time, and not just relating to eating disorders and body dysmorphia. And the number one thing that I recommend to young people if they're worried about a friend is just listen. Don't push for information. Don't push to problem solve. Literally just have your ears open when that person is ready to talk. Of course, if you're really worried about them and you have that kind of relationship as a friend, you're going to say, I'm really worried about you. You know, is something's going on here and maybe you should look to try and get some help. Yeah. With eating disorders and body dysmorphia or body image concerns, it tends to take longer. You know, there's perhaps not that urgency or awareness of a need of urgency. But I think as a friend, the best thing you can do is listen. Try not to be judgmental. Try not to get frustrated yourself if that friend doesn't appear to be wanting to help themselves. It's very, very common. And I hear it fairly frequently that it's really frustrating for parents if they see that their child is struggling, but not seeming to want help. Because of course, as a parent, all you want to do is provide support and love for your child. And if you see them kicking back a little bit, it can be frustrating. Same with a friendship. So I think try to just be a set of ears to listen to. That's the best thing a friend can do. In terms of seeking support, of course, I would be wrong if I didn't say that if these types of traits were present, then a mental health professional should be sought out. I think it's essential. Early intervention in body image traits and eating disorders is critical to working through the concerns as quick as possible and to preventing a long-term condition being not only life-threatening, but life-challenging. As a friend, it's perhaps more difficult for you to seek out support for them because lots of young people will worry that, well, if I tell someone, that friend's going to feel betrayed, they might not want to talk to me again, they perhaps won't talk to me about these concerns again. So I think always encouraging that person to speak to a trusted adult. If it can't be parents, a school counsellor, teacher at school, head of year, someone in the special educational needs department, anyone really who can provide some like a safety net for this young person.
Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much, Mr. Aryan. I really appreciate the opportunity. It's always great to do community and outreach work, and I hope it was as helpful to anyone that will be listening. And I wish you all very well.